So day 2, Karnak. Well, yesterday was a tough day, going through all that central aisle with all those people probably. Hopefully if you followed my advice and go late afternoon, then all the excursion tourists have gone by that time. In the summertime you need to get there by about 9 because it gets really hot. So you want to walk through the central aisle and get to the AA gateway right behind Thutmosis III's memorial temple. So if you have a look at the map, it's highlighted on the map for you. And when you get there, climb the wall and look out and you'll see lots of scrubland. That's where Akhenaten built his temple to Aten, and it was dismantled by Horemheb and used by Horemheb for infill for his pylons. The gateway was built by Nectanebo I in the 30th dynasty, so a mud brick gateway, and then he came along and replaced it with stone. Now, next to the gates on the left, so if you have a look at the highlighted map, are 2 chapels well worth a visit, and one of them's got a statue of Ptah inside. Now, for a little bit of baksheesh, the guardians will get up on the roof and take away the slab, and you can see the light emitting onto the statue of Ptah. If you travel along the wall, so look at the plan, I'll highlight it, there are a couple of small chapels and a small temple, well worth a visit. Nobody gets to see these outlying sites. What the Egyptian government wants is they want people to go down that central aisle, get back onto a bus and go off on the rest of their tour. So you can have these places to yourself. So take your time. There will be local guardians making sure that you don't deface any of the paintings or try and take rubbings. I've seen that happen. But they're not going to interfere with you too much. And you're going to have a really enjoyable time. Now on day 1 I said, don't worry about that, you'll cover that on day 2. And day 2 we're going to go to point I on the map, and you'll see those beautiful reliefs on the outside of the hypostyle hall of Seti I when he captured the city of Kadesh. And all of this decoration was completed by Ramesses II, his son. There are 3 other outer buildings which are well worth having a look at as you pass on to the open air museum. In the open air museum you've got the White Chapel of Saint Waset first, and I did a special video on that. But there's also the Red Chapel of Hatshepsut, and I did a special video on that as well. And they're well worth spending a bit of time there. No need to rush around today. Now is at your leisure. And you're going to see lots of reconstructed chapels and way stations which have been found in different parts of the temple, which were taken down in antiquity and buried and are now here. So enjoy yourself. The open air museum is a real treat. Retrace your steps to Q on the map, and as you pass through you're going to see the ruined obelisk of Hatshepsut, and there's also a stone beetle. Now if you run round it 7 times it's supposed to give you good luck. I've never done it, but lots of people just tend to do. It's a sort of touristy thing to do. When you get to the building of Takara, remember he was Nubian 25th dynasty. This is a special underground passage with an open court chapel, and inside are the reliefs of the sun god making this journey into the netherworld. What is in the netherworld and all the dangers he has to face. So remember, before his bark, sometimes there was a river included in the netherworld, sometimes there wasn't, and so you'd have people pulling the sun bark through the underworld. But in front of his bark are baboons to chop off the heads of the snakes, because remember that in another story the goddess Isis turned herself into an egg, poisoned Ra and asked him for his secrets of magic, and once he uttered the last spell of magic she gave him the antidote. So to make sure that doesn't happen, he employed baboons to go before his bark. This is the underground and open chapel of Takara. Now next up is the Sacred Lake. It's located at O on the map, and if you have a look across you can see a small chapel. That's where the ducks and the geese were kept for Amun-Ra. So they're the sacred ducks. The goose was sacred to Amun-Ra, and there were ducks involved as well. That tunnel, that hole you can see opposite the sacred lake, on the other side of the sacred lake, is where they would drive them out every morning to purify them in the waters. And the priests got in here as well. They had to shave off all their hair, purify themselves, so they were down in this lake as well. Retrace your steps to the third pylon of Amenhotep III at J. Now, when you get there, in front of you is the seventh pylon of Thutmose III. Now, the enclosure walls around there, they weren't built and decorated until the 19th dynasty, and Menreptah left an inscription. So go around and have a good look at all these inscriptions. The other notable point about this open court is that when Karnak got overfilled with statues and stelae and stuff like that, they dug a big pit here and they put all the excess statues and bronzes in here. So we're talking about 751 stone statues were found under this court. 1,700 bronzes were found under this court. So that's why it's so notable. So walk through the seventh pylon and you get to the eighth pylon court. The eighth pylon was built by Hatshepsut and was adapted by Thutmose III and completed by his son Amenhotep II. Note the earlier statues of Amenhotep I. So Amenhotep I was the second king of the 18th dynasty, and Hatshepsut came later. Now, his statue was here, and that pylon was originally a mud brick pylon. So remember what I told you, that priests always looking for benefactors, and during the New Kingdom, the 18th, 19th and 20th dynasties, lots of these kings converted mud brick structures into stone. So let's walk through. V and W on the map are the pylons of Horemheb, the 9th and 10th pylon. So when he took down the Aten temple, he used it as an infill for one of these pylons. Those blocks of stone, which are called talut, have now been removed from that pylon, and they're stored on site at Karnak, and it's the laborious job of trying to recreate where they should go, and eventually they're going to be reconstructed in the open air museum, and boy, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to see what Akhenaten was so crazy about. Now you've now travelled the traverse axis off to the Temple of Mut. So the procession of Opet, Amun-Ra would leave his Holy of Holies, come through these pylons, gone out that gateway and off down to the Temple of Mut to collect his wife. At the same time, Konsu would have left his temple, which we're going to talk about and have a look at very soon, out another gateway and meet them at a T-junction. And then three of them would go off down to the southern harem, which we call Luxor temple today, to celebrate the Feast of Opet. Between the 9th and 10th pylons, you've got X marks the spot. Well, it's not an Indiana Jones thing, you're not going to find any treasure there. But that was a way station and Jubilee Chapel built by Amenhotep II when he was crown prince. So he became co-regent with his father, and when his father was celebrating one of his later jubilees, he built a special chapel for him just here. Retrace your steps to H and F on the map. I've highlighted them for you, so go back there. And at H is the Ptolemaic revival of the second pylon. So it needed some repair work, and they've included decoration there in the Ptolemaic style. Personally, I think that the Greeks got it wrong. They should have just left it Egyptian style, but they wanted to imprint their own culture, and I just think it's nasty, but it's tacky. At F on the map is the historical record of Shushank I. Now Shushank was a king in the 22nd dynasty. Some archaeologists identify him as Shishak in the Bible, and he had this campaign in Palestine and parts of Syria. He was very successful, and this is where it's recorded, on this part of the wall at F. Now, point Y on your map is the New Kingdom Temple of Konsu, the son of Amun-Ra and the goddess Mut. The decoration in this temple is dated to the Ramesside period, so Ramesside period is 20th dynasty, all those different Ramesses, and also during the time when the high priests of Amun were ruling Upper Egypt. All the decoration was done that time. Now the gateway in front of this New Kingdom Temple of Konsu was built during the Ptolemaic period. Now, what king was interested in Egyptian history and well-being? It was old Potbelly, Ptolemy VIII. He was the one who found himself in Upper Egypt and listening to the complaints of the Upper Egyptians, and I think he did a lot of this restoration work during his reign. To finish the tour, let's go to the temple marked Z on the map. Now this is a temple dedicated to the goddess Opet, the hippopotamus goddess, the goddess of childbirth. So inside this temple it's all about the well-being of women and things like that. Now the tour's done. Okay, so that's your second day. So take your time, there's no need to rush around here. And remember, the excursion trips go down the central aisle. They don't come out to these out of the way sites, so you're going to have the place to yourself. And so enjoy it. That's what makes Karnak so special, is you can enjoy these outlying areas in peace and quiet. No one's caught on. The real treasures are outside of the main access. Now, to give you some a little bit of inspiration about Karnak Temple, Dr. Joanne Fletcher specialised in human remains and women's adornment, and also perfumes and incenses and flowers and things like that. And she suggested, based on her research, that the incense that they burned in the temple smelt like a kind of a perfumed chocolate. So if you can just imagine perfumed chocolate as you're walking around the temple of Karnak, that's what it was like in ancient times. The priests would be uttering prayers in the names of past kings. So you'd be hearing lots of mumbling of prayers all over the temple. On the outside of the temple wall, that's where the craftsmen lived with their families, the carpenters who maintained the furniture, the potters who made the sacred bowls for offerings, the bread and beer factories to feed the priests and to feed themselves, the slaughterhouses to kill any additional animals that they needed for the priesthood. They all lived outside of the temple grounds, up against the walls. And of course, as kings became successful in their campaigns, they made donations to the temple of Amun-Ra. Now, when Thutmose III did one of his campaigns, one of his early campaigns, he gave over 1,000 small sheep to the temple of Amun-Ra. Wow, and that was just one campaign, and he was always out with his army. So this temple received lots of donations. As I said, 751 statues were buried at Karnak. Over 1,700 bronzes were buried at Karnak. And bronze was a really expensive metal. They didn't reuse that bronze. They respected the donation. The benefactor had paid a lot of money for tin, which came from Cornwall, copper, which came from Cyprus, to make a bronze. Wow. They buried them, they respected them, they didn't recycle them into currency. Now Karnak at one time, so I'm talking about the 18th and the early part of the 19th dynasty, was one of the most powerful, influential places in North Africa and Palestine and Syria. The decisions made by the priests of Amun with the king affected all those foreign people. And that's what you have to remember. This was once the most powerful place on the planet. And so don't forget that. If you'd like to support this project, on the next page is the information of GoFundMe. Please make a small donation. so I can make this video in Egypt, which you can download onto a phone and use as a tour if you ever go visit Karnak. I hope you've enjoyed the content, and you take care of yourselves out there. Bye for now, and I'll see you soon.